Rain-slicked streets reflected the dim glow of streetlights as Emma, a poor nanny with worn shoes and a heart bigger than her meager paycheck, pressed her only umbrella over a shivering beggar hunched by the corner cafe. She offered him the last piece of her lunch, smiling softly, unaware that the man she helped, eyes cold yet strangely piercing, wasn't just any beggar, but a billionaire hiding behind tattered clothes. She saw only desperation. He saw a rare kindness that money couldn't buy. That night, when he secretly observed her gentle acts from the shadows, he made a decision that would change both their lives forever. But why would a billionaire risk it all for someone who had nothing? And when she was suddenly offered a job in his opulent penthouse, what would happen to the fragile line between her humble world and his lavish one? And could Emma see the truth behind the beggar's eyes before it was too late? Emma's footsteps splashed in puddles as she hurried through the rain-soaked streets of New York City, the thin soles of her shoes barely protecting her feet from the icy water. She clutched a tattered umbrella that had seen better days, its fabric patched in several places, but it was all she had to shield herself from the relentless drizzle. Her arms were heavy with a small bag of groceries, bought with the last of her paycheck, and her mind spun with worry over how she would feed little Liam tonight. Even though she had been working 3 jobs for months, money never seemed enough, and every day felt like a tightrope walk over a chasm she could never escape. She rounded the corner near the 24-hour cafe and froze for a heartbeat. There, huddled on the curb with a threadbare coat that barely covered his thin frame, was a man whose eyes glimmered with quiet intensity. Emma didn't hesitate. Instinctively, she pressed her umbrella over him and knelt down, shivering herself. "Here, take this," she whispered, offering him the last half of her sandwich, her voice gentle but carrying a warmth that surprised even her. The man's eyes flickered to hers, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, a silent acknowledgement of humanity in a world that often overlooked it. He took the sandwich with trembling hands, his lips curling into a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you," he said quietly, the voice calm but layered with unspoken stories. Emma smiled softly, her heart fluttering with a mixture of pity and hope. She didn't see the expensive watch barely hidden beneath his sleeve, or the way his posture hinted at a man used to command and power. She saw only a beggar who needed help, and for Emma that was enough. As she walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Behind a foggy cafe window, the man lingered, studying her movements with meticulous attention. Every act of kindness, every gesture of selflessness, he noted them all. He saw a heart that gave even when it had nothing to spare, a spirit that refused to be hardened by poverty. And something inside him, a part he had long kept buried beneath layers of wealth and guarded detachment, stirred for the first time in years. Back in her tiny apartment above a laundromat, Emma sank into the worn couch, her legs aching from the day's labor. Liam, her 5-year-old nephew, sat cross-legged on the floor, coloring with crayons that were missing half their labels. "Dinner's almost ready, Liam," she said, trying to mask the fatigue that weighed her down. He looked up with wide, trusting eyes that seemed too old for their innocence, a reminder of why she worked so hard despite exhaustion that never seemed to lift. Emma's mind drifted back to the years before Liam came into her life. She had grown up in foster homes, bouncing from one temporary family to another, learning early that the world didn't owe her anything. Yet, through every hardship, she had clung to a simple belief, that small acts of kindness could ripple through the lives of others, changing them in ways money never could. Her father's absence and her mother's abandonment had left scars, but they also left a determination, a stubborn, unyielding hope that she could break the cycle for Liam. Meanwhile, in a sleek penthouse not far from the bustling streets below, the same man unknown to Emma was navigating a world of opulence and expectation. Alexander Hale, billionaire heir to a sprawling real estate empire, moved silently through the marble hallways, his tailored suit cutting a sharp silhouette against the golden glow of the chandeliers. Yet behind his calculated composure, his mind kept returning to the image of the poor nanny who had given him half a sandwich without hesitation, who had smiled at him in the rain without fear or judgment. Alexander's life had been one of careful planning, of rigid rules and inherited power. Trust was a luxury he could not afford, and yet Emma's presence had sparked a curiosity he hadn't felt in years. There was something in her vulnerability paired with strength, a rare authenticity that no wealth or privilege could simulate. and for reasons he could not yet articulate. He knew he had to see her again, not as a beggar or a passerby, but as the woman she truly was, beyond the trappings of circumstance. That night, Emma tucked Liam into bed, listening to his soft rhythmic breathing, her own mind restless with the day's events. She thought of the man on the street and shook her head, wondering why one simple act of kindness could leave such a lasting impression. Little did she know that the man had already set in motion a plan that would pull her from her modest. The next morning, Emma trudged through the streets with her usual exhaustion weighing her down, her mind still buzzing with thoughts of the beggar from the previous night. She tried to push it aside, telling herself it was a fleeting encounter. Yet the image of his piercing eyes lingered. She didn't know it then, but Alexander Hale had spent the entire night watching the city lights from his penthouse, replaying the moment she had offered him kindness like a precious, fragile memory. Every gesture, every word she had spoken in her soft, unwavering tone had etched itself into his mind. The phone rang sharply in Emma's cramped apartment, startling her. She picked it up with wary curiosity, expecting another bill collector or a call from her second job. Instead, a smooth, confident voice greeted her. "Ms. Emma Clark?" Alexander's words carried authority, yet there was a warmth layered underneath, a rare balance she wasn't used to hearing. "I saw what you did last night, and I want to offer you a job." Emma blinked, thinking it was a prank. "A job? I don't understand." "I need someone who cares," Alexander said simply, as if that explained everything. "I want you to help me with someone very important at my penthouse. It won't be easy, but I believe you're the right person." Her heart skipped a beat. Part of her screamed to hang up, to protect herself from yet another disappointment. Yet something in the voice, the same intensity she had seen in his eyes, made her pause. She found herself nodding despite the lingering fear. "Okay, I'll come." When Emma arrived at the towering glass building that housed Alexander's penthouse, the enormity of it struck her like a physical force. The lobby gleamed with marble floors and golden fixtures, a stark contrast to the cracked sidewalk she called home. A discreet elevator whisked her to the top floor, and as the doors opened, she was met with a sight that made her breath catch. The penthouse was vast, filled with luxury she had never imagined in her life. Sparkling chandeliers, floor-to-ceiling windows with a panoramic view of the city, and an air of controlled elegance that radiated wealth. Alexander appeared from behind a column, impeccably dressed, his presence commanding yet oddly familiar. His eyes softened when they met hers. "Emma, welcome. I promise I'm not here to overwhelm you. I just need your help." Emma hesitated, absorbing the grandeur around her, her instincts clashing with the reality of her situation. "I'm just a nanny," she murmured, the words tasting insufficient in the face of such opulence. "You're more than that," Alexander replied, his gaze unwavering. "You see people in ways most never do. That is a rare gift, and I need someone who can care without judgment, who can nurture without expectation. I need you for that reason alone." His words struck something deep inside her, a mixture of awe and skepticism. She wanted to believe him, but her life had taught her that promises in gilded surroundings often concealed ulterior motives. Yet something in Alexander's eyes, the honesty beneath the carefully constructed facade, made her pause. That evening, as she began her duties, Emma encountered the first of the challenges, a young boy, around Liam's age, who was withdrawn, suspicious of every gesture, every word. His name was Ethan, and his world was a palace of solitude and expectation, a gilded cage that made him wary of strangers. Emma knelt to meet his gaze, offering a soft smile and gentle words. "Hi, I'm Emma. I'm here to be your friend." Ethan's eyes narrowed and he crossed his arms. "I don't need a friend." Emma didn't flinch. "That's okay," she said, her voice calm. "I'm not here to force anything. I'm just here to help, and maybe one day, if you want, we can play together." The boy's skepticism didn't fade immediately, but Alexander watched from the doorway, a faint smile tugging at his lips. He knew it would take time. His life, his world, had made Ethan wary. Yet Emma's patience, kindness, and unwavering dedication were exactly what he had hoped to find. Later, as the city lights twinkled below them, Alexander approached Emma quietly, the distance between them charged with unspoken tension. "I know this is all overwhelming," he said softly, "and I also know you have no idea who I really am. But the truth is, I've never met anyone like you, Emma. I don't know how this will end, but I need you here just as you are." Emma's pulse quickened, uncertainty and curiosity battling within her. She wanted to ask about his wealth, his identity, the reason for this sudden invitation into a world so unlike her own. But something held her back. Perhaps it was instinct, perhaps caution. Yet deep down a tiny spark of hope ignited, the feeling that maybe, just maybe, she had stepped into something bigger than herself, something that could change everything. As the night deepened, Alexander retreated to his study, but his mind remained on Emma. Her simple acts of humanity, her ability to see past appearances had unsettled him in ways he hadn't anticipated. He realized that this was more than a fleeting curiosity. It was the beginning of something dangerous, thrilling, and utterly transformative. And he knew that introducing her fully into his world would test them both in ways neither could predict. Meanwhile, Emma lay in the guest room, the lavish bed beneath her feeling alien yet comforting. She couldn't shake the feeling that her life had shifted irreversibly, that the encounter with the beggar had opened a door to a reality she had never imagined. Questions swirled in her mind. Who was Alexander really? Why had he chosen her? And when the truth of his wealth and secrets came to light, would her trust hold, or would the fragile bond between them crumble under the weight of revelation? The rain had returned, tapping softly against the massive. Days passed in the penthouse, and Emma began to settle into a routine that was both exhausting and exhilarating. The grandeur around her no longer felt entirely alien. She learned to navigate the marble halls, the whispering staff, and the endless demands of a life she had never imagined. Yet every night when the city lights shimmered against the skyline, her mind drifted to the man who had first appeared as a beggar, the quiet intensity in his eyes, the mysterious aura that refused to unravel completely. She didn't yet know his true identity, and the uncertainty gnawed at her. Alexander observed her quietly, often from behind closed doors, watching the subtle ways she cared for Ethan, the patience she displayed when the boy refused to speak or eat. He noticed how she moved through the opulent rooms without intimidation, how she treated every small inconvenience with grace rather than complaint. Her humility, coupled with an unyielding kindness, challenged the very walls he had built around himself. In that observation, he felt something he hadn't allowed himself in years: hope. Fragile and potent, intertwined with desire. One afternoon, Emma found herself in the massive kitchen, preparing lunch for Ethan, when she caught a glimpse of a photograph on the polished granite countertop. It was of Alexander in a tailored suit, standing beside a woman whose elegance seemed to radiate from the frame. Her heart stuttered. There was a tension in the image, a story hinted at but incomplete. Emma couldn't help but wonder about his life before her arrival, the layers hidden beneath the calm exterior he presented. Ethan, who had begun to warm slowly to her presence, suddenly stormed into the kitchen, frustration flashing in his eyes. "Why does he even need me here? You're just a nanny." His voice cracked, half from anger, half from fear. Emma knelt down to his level, keeping her voice soft and even. "I'm here because someone cares about you, Ethan, and I'm here to make sure you have someone you can trust no matter what." The boy hesitated, his gaze wavering. "But he's rich. He doesn't need me. He doesn't care about me." Emma's heart ached. "He might be rich, Ethan, but everyone needs someone who sees them. That's what matters most. And I promise I see you." Meanwhile, Alexander lingered behind the partially closed door, watching the exchange. He realized that Emma's ability to reach Ethan was not just extraordinary, it was transformative. The boy's walls, carefully constructed over years of isolation, were beginning to crack under the light of her patience and sincerity. And yet, Alexander's mind wrestled with another truth. He could no longer maintain the facade of anonymity forever. The secret of his identity, the beggar, the billionaire, loomed over every interaction. A truth that could shatter the delicate balance Emma had brought into his home. That evening, as the city below drowned in neon reflections, Alexander summoned Emma to his private study. The room smelled faintly of old books and polished mahogany, a stark contrast to the sterile opulence of the penthouse. "Emma," he began, his voice steady but layered with unspoken tension. "There's something you need to know, something important about me." Emma's pulse quickened. She had sensed a moment like this was coming but had never anticipated how it would feel. Electric, terrifying, and necessary all at once. "What is it?" she asked cautiously. "I'm not just the man you met on the street," he admitted, choosing each word with care. "I am Alexander Hale, billionaire, heir to this penthouse and a life that most would never imagine. That night I was testing something, observing how you cared for someone with nothing, and I realized, I've never met anyone like you. Emma's eyes widened, a swirl of emotions crossing her face. Shock, disbelief, confusion, and something deeper she couldn't yet name. You were the beggar? She whispered, her voice trembling. All that? You were testing me? Alexander shook his head. Not testing. Watching. Hoping. I wanted to see who you truly are, Emma. Not who you would be around wealth or comfort, but who you are when nothing is expected in return. That's rare, and it's why I needed you here. The revelation hung between them, charged with tension. Emma felt a storm of conflicting emotions. Anger at being kept in the dark, awe at the magnitude of his wealth, and an unbidden flutter of curiosity and something she didn't understand yet. She wanted to retreat to reclaim her dignity, but she also wanted to understand the man who had seen her kindness as a reflection of something he longed to find in his life. Ethan, sensing the gravity of the moment, peeked through the slightly ajar door, his eyes wide with curiosity, watched as Emma processed the truth. She looked at Alexander, the man who had been both stranger and observer, and realized that the world she had stepped into was far more complex than she could have imagined. Every choice she made now carried weight. Every gesture could change the fragile connection forming between them. Alexander took a cautious step forward. Emma, I know this is overwhelming. I don't expect you to forgive me for the secrecy immediately. I needed you to see who I am without the barriers. And now that you know, I hope we can move forward, not as a beggar and a nanny, but as two people who can see and trust each other. Emma's mind raced. Could she trust him? Could she embrace the world he offered without losing herself in it? And as she looked into his eyes that had once been hidden behind tattered clothes but now shone with the weight of honesty and longing, she realized that nothing in her life had prepared her for the storm that was about to unfold. The rain began again outside, drumming against the windows, echoing the tension and uncertainty swirling inside the penthouse. Emma knew that her life had irrevocably changed, that the delicate balance of trust, love, and revelation had begun. And as the night deepened, the question lingered in the air. Could she navigate a world where wealth, secrecy, and vulnerability collided, and could Alexander truly trust her heart as much as she would soon need to trust his? The following morning, the penthouse was quiet, almost deceptively so. Emma sat at the edge of the grand bed, her hands folded in her lap, replaying Alexander's confession in her mind. The truth that he had been the beggar, the man she had shown kindness to without knowing who he really was, hung over her like a delicate thread, both fragile and potent. She couldn't deny a stirring of something she hadn't felt in years: curiosity, connection, and a hesitant hope that perhaps her life had begun to intersect with someone extraordinary in more ways than one. Alexander entered the room silently, his expression unreadable. He stopped a few feet away, studying her, and for a moment the space between them was charged with anticipation. Emma, he began, his voice careful, I know it's a lot to take in. I don't expect you to forgive me right away for keeping my identity from you. But everything I've done since that night, every decision, every step, has been because I saw something in you that I can't ignore. Emma met his gaze, her own conflicted. I don't even know where to start, she admitted softly. You weren't just a beggar, you were a stranger in need, and I helped you because I couldn't not. But now, knowing the truth, I feel, her voice faltered, the flood of emotions making it difficult to speak. I feel betrayed, and yet I feel curious. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. Alexander stepped closer, keeping his distance but letting the sincerity in his eyes do the talking. You're supposed to feel whatever comes naturally, Emma. I don't want to force anything. I only hope you can see that what I feel, what I hoped for, was never about wealth or games. It was about you, the real you, unmasked, untamed by circumstance. The weight of his words pressed on her, both comforting and unsettling. She thought of Liam, of Ethan, of the small ways kindness had shaped her life, and realized that she had always believed in the power of seeing people as they truly are. Alexander's truth, though hidden, had tested that belief, and somehow it had passed. Their fragile moment was interrupted when Ethan appeared in the doorway, his expression cautious yet hopeful. "Emma, you're not leaving, are you?" he asked quietly. Emma smiled gently, kneeling to meet his gaze. "No, Ethan, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Alexander watched them, a mixture of relief and admiration in his eyes. The walls Ethan had built were slowly crumbling under Emma's patience and care, and Alexander knew that if anyone could guide his nephew through the isolation of wealth and expectation, it was her. Later, they walked through the penthouse together, Alexander silently explaining small details of his life without overwhelming her. He told her about his family, the pressures of maintaining an empire, the loneliness that wealth had imposed upon him. Emma listened with the kind of attention that made him realize how rare it was to be truly heard. She asked questions, not out of judgment but out of genuine curiosity, and every answer deepened her understanding of the man behind the beggar. As the day stretched into evening, a delicate tension remained. Emma's trust in Alexander was growing, but the road ahead was uncertain. She had glimpsed the fragility of his heart beneath the armor of wealth, and she understood that the same hands that could hold power over empires could also be vulnerable, tender, and fallible. The breakthrough came unexpectedly when Alexander invited her to sit with him on the balcony overlooking the city. Lights twinkled below like a sea of stars, and the rain had softened into a gentle drizzle. "Emma," he said quietly, "I've always believed that life can surprise us in ways we never imagine. That night you didn't just show kindness. You reminded me what it means to care without expectation. I don't know what comes next, but I do know I want you in my life, not because of wealth, but because of who you are." Emma's breath caught, and for a moment, the city and the penthouse faded away. She thought of the struggles she had endured, the loneliness she had carried, and the unexpected connection that had changed everything. She realized that trust, once given, could bridge even the widest chasms between worlds. I don't know what to say," she admitted softly, tears welling in her eyes. "But I know this. I want to see where this goes. I want to trust, and I want to help Ethan see that love and care aren't defined by wealth, but by heart." Alexander reached for her hand, a tentative gesture that carried the weight of his emotions. "Then let's start there," he said, a faint smile breaking across his face. "Together." And in that moment, the invisible lines between beggar and billionaire, nanny and guardian, past and present, began to blur. Emma felt the fragile thread of destiny weave them together, binding their lives in ways neither could have predicted. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the city glistening with reflection and possibility. Inside, hearts once cautious and worlds once separate now beat in quiet harmony, daring to hope, daring to trust, and daring to embrace the unknown. As the night deepened, Alexander and Emma sat together hand in hand, watching Ethan play nearby, the echoes of laughter filling the penthouse. Questions of fear, doubt, and uncertainty lingered, but for the first time, they felt anchored by something real: connection, trust, and the unshakable belief that kindness, once recognized, could change lives forever.